Welcome to this presentation on Live Long and Stay Healthy, 6 Simple Lifestyle Behaviors Anyone Can Do. I'm Richard Rosenfeld. I'm a distinguished professor of otolaryngology, ear, nose, and throat at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, where I also chair the committee on plant-based health and nutrition. I'm engaged in a number of endeavors related to lifestyle medicine. I'm board certified in that specialty and very active, and I'm thrilled to share some thoughts with you today on how to live longer, and not just live longer, be healthy while you're doing it. So centenarians, people who live to 100 or more, are becoming fairly common. Almost 600,000 of them now in the world. It's been growing steadily. The problem with becoming a centenarian, however, is you need a lot of candles for your birthday cake. But if you're willing to put up with that inconvenience, you might consider visiting these 5 parts of the world: Loma Linda, California, Costa Rica, Italy, Greece, and Japan. There are hotspots there where we find disproportionate numbers of centenarians, people living to 100 or more. And these hotspots are called blue zones, zones where people live longer. Now, if you don't want to travel to all these zones, you can take advantage of research done by Dan Buettner with National Geographic, who in 2005 embarked on a study of the people in these areas to try and find out what is it that lets them live to 100 and in such concentrations far above the rest of the world. So he spent 3 years doing that, published this book, The Blue Zones, in 2008 with a second edition. And we see a few things in common in these areas. First, they tend to eat plant-based diets. They eat some meat and fish and cheese, but they're mainly plant vegetable based. They move around a lot. They get exercise, but not on the treadmill, not in the gym. They do it naturally through gardening, working, chores. They have a purpose in life. They know why they're on the planet. They know what they want to do, and they live every day to the fullest. They hang around with good people and good social connections. So we're going to expand on these as we go forward. But thinking about these blue zones, it's incredible what we see as far as the increase in longevity, the likelihood of reaching 100, the number of centenarians, and the life expectancy. These are interesting places worthy of study. But you may say, well, everyone in my family dies young. We have heart disease, we have cancer. How can I live longer? Well, the genetic aspect of it is really a minority. If we look at individuals at high genetic risk for heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular problems, what we see is, yes, they are dramatically more likely to have mortality, to die of this, than the general population. But, and this is the big but that's important, if you have a favorable lifestyle, meaning 3 of the factors in this study: you don't smoke, you're not obese, you get some activity, and you eat healthy, you have almost a 50% lower risk than those who only do one or fewer of these things. So the DNA, your genes are not your destiny. Yes, they are important, but perhaps they're 25% of what happens to you. The other 75% is in your control. So let's look at it this way. A study in New England Journal where they looked at health determinants. What leads to death, to mortality? Behavioral patterns were the largest contributor, 40%, with genetics only 30%. Rather depressing for someone like myself in healthcare, only 10% of healthcare. And if we look at what types of behaviors relate to these deaths, we see it's overwhelmingly eating too much, being fat, being obese, being inactive, and smoking. Things within our control. Another way to look at it, here's a review of 4 different very advanced models looking at mortality. And what we see is behavior. Behavior is up to 65% of what predicts mortality. Again, medical care, relatively small. Healthcare, 5 to 17%. You can control your behavior. You cannot control your genes. So accepting that we do have some role in our fate, what are these six simple lifestyle behaviors we can all practice. A starting point is the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which sort of codifies more of the blue zone knowledge into 6 big areas: nutrition, exercise, avoiding risky substances, managing stress, sleeping well, and healthy relationships. Or we could say, eat plants, keep moving, don't smoke, stay calm, sleep well, love people. Lifestyle medicine is a fairly new discipline, 15 to 20 years old. Uh, it's evidence-based. It builds upon a huge body of knowledge to prevent, treat, and even reverse many chronic diseases just with lifestyle behaviors, avoiding medicine and surgery. There is overwhelming evidence been published in the past 50, 60 years, and even ongoing at a rapid clip to support behaviors and their impact on your longevity and health. You can review this if you'd like at www.lifestylemedicine.org. Click on the research, scientific evidence, and read away. So let's get into these 6 simple behaviors. And because of time, I can only glance upon them here. Each one could be an hour or several hours of discussion in and of itself. My purpose is to point you in the right direction, and hopefully you can then seek out more knowledge. So starting point, key, eating plants. I don't mean being a giraffe and grazing on the nearest tree, but I do mean eating healthy. So the standard American diet is terrible. It consists of highly processed, refined, ultra-processed foods, lots of sweets and meat and dairy and eggs. And this leads to heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, some cancers. It's the leading cause of death around the world is poor diet. So if we decrease our sweet snacks, fast foods, fried foods, refined grains, sugar, meat, and eggs, and instead increase our whole plant foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products, seeds, nuts, what we get is whole food plant-based eating, which keeps us healthy. I'm not saying go 100% plant-based, but the more you move in that direction, the better. Where I work at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, we have a major medical center, and our executive committee of physicians endorsed this statement that plant-based nutrition can prevent, treat, or even reverse certain chronic diseases in adults. And what we mean by plant-based nutrition is really emphasizing vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, and fruits. The diseases you can impact most are being overweight, obese, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and high cholesterol lipids. You can see this position statement along with a lot of other material at our committee website, www.downstate/plant-based, where you'll find a host of materials. There's a research evidence summary summarizing dozens and dozens of key studies to support this and its efficacy. We also talk in our position statement that the real benefit of shifting towards plants is adding these whole grains healthy foods. It's not just simply a matter of removing the meat, the fish, the cheese, the animal products from the diet, but within this group, the research really doesn't support one type of plant-based diet versus another. So for example, a Mediterranean diet versus say hypertension, a DASH diet, or simply a whole food plant-based diet, but we do shun junk food, junk vegan food, sugars, fats, refined, ultra-processed foods. You can read about this on our website. You can access this guide to eating for health and longevity, really with a wealth of information. So you're eating well and you're shifting towards plants. The next thing is to keep moving, be active. Physical activity guidelines were recently updated for Americans. And if you stay active, you can reduce things that lead to your death, namely high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even a host of mental brain diseases and some cancers. Adults should really move more and sit less. You know, it's been said that sitting is the new smoking. You need to move and be active, ideally 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity. That's only about 25 minutes a day. We're talking walking, moving around, dancing, gardening, yard work, even housework. Or you can get more vigorous and half the time. Muscle strengthening activities, so resistance, weights are important and should ideally be done twice a week. What's really interesting about the new updated guidelines on activity is the emphasis on brain health. There's been a wealth of information published about how physical activity keeps your brain healthy. It reduces dementia, Alzheimer's, improves neurocognitive function. We are facing an epidemic of Alzheimer's in the United States. It's increasing rapidly. Anxiety, depression. So activity not only lets you live longer, but it lets you be more alert, engaged, and healthy and happy in the process. Why this 150 to 300 minutes per week? We see here a summary of what happens as you increase your activity to your mortality, your death rate. And that sweet spot is around 150 to 300 minutes, where you really reduce by 30 to 40% your mortality compared to being sedentary. If you go way out and exercise like a lunatic, 1,500 hours or more a week, you begin to actually increase slightly your mortality. Third simple behavior beyond eating right and being active is don't smoke. Or if you do smoke, stop. As you can see here, quitting even within 20 minutes gives you a benefit, and that benefit goes on for 15 years. So stop smoking. Better yet, avoid smoking and risky substances such as alcohol, drugs, and even things like marijuana. So smoking alone is responsible for 13% of life loss. The average age of death is only 69 if you smoke. Alcohol, even worse, loses 29% of life. The average death of a heavy alcohol user, a chronic user, is 56 years. I'm not saying go dry. As a matter of fact, in the blue zones, those hotspots of centenarians, they tend to have a glass of red wine fairly frequently, even once a day. So enjoy your wine and your alcohol, but very modestly. Do not get alcohol use disorder. While you're doing all this, stay calm, relax, relieve stress. That's behavior number 4. A positive affect in many, many studies has beneficial outcomes. You tend to have a 25% reduced death rate in the analyses. And then if you adjust for factors like your medical, psychological, and social issues, it's still significant. By this positive affect, we don't necessarily mean meditation, although mindfulness is important. Mindfulness really means being engaged in what's happening. It puts you in the present. You know, there's a saying that a positive affect, positive mental attitude involves 3 things. First, contentment with the past. Second, happiness in the present. And third, hope for the future. It's that happiness, that awareness in the present that gives you mindfulness. It means not obsessing about things that have happened already or things that might be, maybe, could be, maybe. Forget about it. Focus on the present. And you don't have to sit and meditate or go on a 7-day no talking retreat. Mindfulness in the Western view is really just an active engagement with your surroundings, being aware of things. If things aren't happening the way you like, stopping, thinking, reflecting, not just filling your mind with all sorts of extraneous thoughts. The Eastern view does involve meditation, and that's fine if that's what you enjoy, but reduce stress. You know, Dean Ornish really said it best. Meditation, mindfulness will not bring you peace, but it stops you from sabotaging yourself, from disturbing what's already there. By focusing on the present, being mindful, actively engaging, or even meditating, you bring out your inner calm. Next thing, sleep well, something many of us do not do. Get that deep, restful, restorative sleep. Lots of research shows that sleeping a certain amount of time, in particular, 7 hours per day is the sweet spot. If you're much less or much longer than this, you actually have more mortality, stroke, cardiovascular incidents. And as you can see here, the sweet spot's at 7 hours per day. 6 is not bad, 8 is not bad. So if you're in that 6 to 8 range, you're probably good. Better to be maybe 7 to 8, but 9 or 10 actually increases mortality, and going below 6 is also not good for you. So hit that sweet spot if you can. Some tips on sleep hygiene, on sleeping better. If you do take naps, make them power naps, 20 minutes at most. Otherwise, you start interfering with your sleep cycles. The blue light is key. So electronic devices, tablets, phones, TV sets, put them in that easy eye mode where the blue light is reduced. There are lots of other suggestions on sleeping well. Some of my favorite are to get a little exercise, take a walk, get some modest exercise 2 or 3 hours before bedtime, and you'll sleep better. The temperature is important. If it's really hot and toasty, that might feel good when you go in, but it's disruptive to your sleep. You want it on the cool side. Get in a habit, same time going to sleep, waking up, get as consistent as possible, whether it's a weekday or a weekend. That will help you. And don't focus on insomnia. If you have one of those restless nights, just hanging out calm, you're still getting rest, you're restoring yourself, your muscles are calming. Some people say get out of bed and do something else and then come back. Do what works for you, but do not obsess with insomnia. If you have a bad night's sleep, there's always the next day. Sleep duration impacts your cardiovascular health. So here we have a very recent study looking at a large number of adults. That 6 to 9 hours in this study was the sweet point. If you got less than 6, your mortality from cardiovascular disease increased by 35%, 9 hours or longer, 28%. So again, we see that 6, 7, 8 range, ideally 7 is what you should strive for. The last of the 6 simple behaviors is to be social, to love people, to connect. We have now almost 1 in 4 adults who feel lonely or isolated. This was from 2018. I suppose after the pandemic, if we took this survey, it would probably be twice as much. And there are consequences to this. They lead to health, mental issues, depression, problems with your job, your personal relationships. This isolation is not good. Loneliness, some say, is an epidemic. And a recent review of this showed that loneliness in men increased your mortality by 44%. In women, 26%. Now, there were some issues with the quality of the studies in this review, the 35 articles they looked at, but they found that what they saw really didn't vary based on the bias or the quality of the study and whether they controlled for depression. So a real issue here. Well-being, psychological well-being is related to several factors, and the big 6 are shown here. I'm emphasizing positive relationships now, but we also have purpose in life, your mastery of your environment, your own growth, autonomy, and how you feel about yourself. These have groundings and theoretical basis of psychology. There's tremendous evidence to show, and it increases constantly, that focusing on this well-being will reduce risk and promote longevity. Equally important is the concept of resilience, the capacity to function well in the face of adversity. And that resilience is built through these relationships and positive well-being aspects. So that's a quick overview of the 6 behaviors. How do you get started? What can you do? Well, the first thing to realize, you can do it. As I noted before, maybe 25, 30% is your genes. The other part you can control. Up to 65% of it are your behaviors, which you alone can control. Might not be easy, but you can. And when you accept that you are on the way to making a difference in your life. It is so empowering. Lifestyle medicine. Recently in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, was this prescription for longevity, and it builds upon what we spoke about, finding your purpose, a purpose, as in the blue zones, really brings you calmness, tranquility, and purpose, and it helps you live long because you have a reason to live. Social engagement, connectedness, and the many lifestyle things we spoke about, ranging from eating right to the physical activity to getting the right amount of sleep, reducing stress, and the other factors. This is not an always or never or an all or nothing scenario. We're talking about some of the time, or ideally most of the time. Most of the time with these behaviors certainly beats never, even sometimes beats never. And it's the path to eventually reaching all of the time. Very recent from the National Academy Press, which is the old Institute of Medicine in the United States, a very detailed report on mortality rates. And what prompted this is a rise in mortality in the US and a decline in life expectancy for the first time in 100 years. This stalled in 2010, and from 2014 forward, we've seen declining life expectancy. The US, as wonderful as it is 26th in longevity of 35 countries in the world. And the real issue is the working age adults, 25 to 64. We see there's more use of drugs, alcohol, and a higher suicide rate, and mortality from cardiovascular disease, which has been declining. The strength of that decline has slowed significantly recently due to poor lifestyle conditions that we've spoken about. So to sum up these 6 conditions: eat plants, keep moving, get sleep, stay calm, don't smoke, and love people. Take small steps. It'll get you in the right direction. And hopefully this presentation has opened your eyes to the empowering message that there are simple behaviors you can do to help you live longer and enjoy every moment of it. Thank you for listening. I hope this was informative.